There's a moment that visits every person at some point in their life. It does not arrive with music or ceremony. No one else is present for it. No one applauds it. No one even knows it happened. It is just you, alone, in the stillness of an ordinary moment, face to face with a question you have been quietly avoiding. What if the reason nothing has changed is simply because nothing about me has changed? That question is uncomfortable. But it might be the most important question you ever allow yourself to honestly answer. Most people spend their entire lives searching for one giant breakthrough, one moment that rewrites everything, one decision that transforms their circumstances overnight. And while they search for that moment, life has been whispering something far simpler to them every single day. Not a revolution, not a miracle, just 1%. 1% better than you were yesterday. That is all. Not 50%. Not overnight. Not a dramatic reinvention of everything at once. Just 1%. One small, quiet, almost invisible improvement repeated with enough consistency to eventually become unrecognizable. Think about how strange it is that we admire mountains but ignore the sand. We celebrate people who have built remarkable lives, but overlook the years they spent becoming valuable long before the world ever noticed them. We see the athlete holding the trophy. We never imagine the thousands of mornings when no one was watching, when they trained through sore muscles and tired minds and not a single guarantee that any of it would ever amount to anything visible. Here is what most people never fully understand. Success is almost completely invisible while it is happening. Failure is almost completely invisible while it is happening too. Neither arrives in a single day. Both are built quietly. Both grow in silence. Both are earned through the accumulation of choices that felt too small to matter in the moment they were made. You do not become financially free after one disciplined month. You do not damage a relationship after forgetting one important moment. You do not become wise after reading one chapter. Life is always asking one question. Not what did you accomplish today? Not what do you own? Not what do people think of you? Life is always asking who are you becoming? Because becoming always arrives before having. Always. If this kind of thinking is what you are looking for, subscribe to this channel right now and turn on notifications. Every video here is built for people who understand that the life they want is assembled one honest daily decision at a time. Years ago, I heard about an old gardener. He was not famous. He did not live a large or celebrated life by any visible measure. But every morning before the sun had finished rising, he was already moving through his garden with nothing more than a watering can and a quiet kind of peace that most people spend their whole lives searching for. Someone once asked him how he grew such remarkable flowers. He laughed. Not because the question was foolish, because he recognized immediately that it was the wrong question entirely. He said, "I do not grow flowers. I take care of the soil every single day. The flowers decide to come on their own." That sentence landed somewhere deep. Because most people are chasing flowers, very few are improving the soil. Your habits are your soil. Your discipline is your soil. Your character, your attitude, the way you speak to yourself at midnight when no one else can hear, all of it is soil. And every single day you are either nourishing it or neglecting it. You cannot plant excuses and expect confidence to grow from them. You cannot water procrastination and expect opportunity to bloom from it. You cannot feed your mind with comparison and complaint every single day and then wonder why your life feels so small. Nature does not negotiate. You cannot argue with the harvest. You can only examine what you planted. Now imagine this. Two people are sitting in the same room tonight. Both hear the same idea. One decides that starting tomorrow, they will read 10 pages every day. Just 10. The other thinks 10 pages is too small to matter. 1 year passes. The first person has moved through thousands of pages, dozens of books, hundreds of new ideas, perspectives, and possibilities they never had access to before. The second person has read arguments and distractions and other people's opinions. Both were making daily choices. Neither one fully realized they were writing their future. Because the future is not written once in a single dramatic sitting. It is written daily, 1% at a time, one decision at a time, one morning at a time. People ask the wrong question about success. They ask, how long does it take? The better question, the question that actually changes things, is how long are you willing to become the person who deserves it? Because success is not something you chase, it is something you attract by becoming. The world pays for value, not wishes, not unacted potential, value. If you become more valuable, your opportunities begin multiplying. If you become more disciplined, your confidence begins compounding. If you become more reliable, trust begins surrounding you. If you become more patient, your decisions begin improving. Every single improvement compounds over time, and the tragedy is that compound growth feels boring during the process. That is precisely why so few people stay with it long enough to experience what it eventually produces. Your routine is the real introduction to your future, not your goals, not your vision board, not the things you say you are going to do. Your actual daily routine. The things you do on ordinary Tuesday afternoons when nothing exciting is happening and nobody is watching. If I followed your actual behavior for 30 days, not your words, not your intentions, just your habits, I could tell you with reasonable confidence where your life is heading. Because habits reveal direction, and direction, sustained over enough time, determines destination. Think about an airplane departing for a distant city. If the pilot adjusts the course by just 1 degree, the passengers do not feel it. The conversation continues. Nothing seems different. But hundreds of miles later, the plane lands somewhere entirely different. 1 degree. That is all. Your life works in exactly the same way. 1 degree more discipline, 1 degree more patience, 1 degree more willingness to do the uncomfortable thing before you feel ready. Months later, years later, you look around and barely recognize where you have arrived compared to where you once were. Here is what most people never fully grasp. Tiny improvements feel insignificant in the moment because they are competing directly against your emotions. And emotions demand instant reward. Wisdom understands delayed reward. A child asks how soon. An adult asks how long. But the person who is truly building something asks a different question entirely. They ask, who must I become while I wait? And when that becomes your question, waiting stops feeling like punishment. It begins feeling like preparation. Every difficult season becomes a classroom. Every setback becomes training material. Every disappointment becomes an opportunity to strengthen something inside you that success alone could never build. Pain is a teacher, but only for those who are willing to listen to it. For everyone else, it simply becomes suffering. There are 2 kinds of pain available to every person in this life: the pain of discipline and the pain of regret. Discipline whispers today. Regret screams tomorrow. Discipline asks for minutes. Regret demands years. Discipline costs effort. Regret costs dreams. One is an investment. The other is a debt that accumulates interest in silence and then presents itself when you least expect it and can least afford to pay it. I once heard about a man who worked in a factory for nearly 3 decades. Every day looked identical from the outside. Wake up, go to work, come home. The people around him assumed that nothing extraordinary would ever emerge from his life. What they did not see were his evenings. Every night for years, he spent 1 hour studying. Not because anyone required it, not because there was an exam coming, because he had made a decision that the man who would earn tomorrow's opportunities had to be built tonight. 1 hour. That was all. The people closest to him questioned it. His co-workers called it unrealistic. Years passed without visible evidence that anything was changing. Then one day, a position of leadership opened at his company. They needed someone with communication skills, with self-discipline, with the ability to solve problems calmly under pressure. And suddenly, the quiet man nobody had been paying attention to became the obvious choice. People who had known him for years called it luck. But luck had nothing to do with that morning. It had been arriving quietly every evening for years, 1% at a time. That is how it actually works, not in explosions, in accumulation. Rivers do not reshape mountains by being powerful in a single moment. They reshape mountains by being persistent across an entire lifetime. Water appears soft, stone appears strong. But given enough time, softness defeats resistance. Consistency outlasts talent. And here is the most encouraging part of that truth. Consistency belongs to everyone. You do not have to be born gifted to become consistent. You do not need perfect circumstances to become reliable. You do not need extraordinary intelligence to improve 1% today. You simply need a decision. A real decision. Repeated long enough that it becomes your identity. Because identity changes everything. When someone says, "I am trying to wake up earlier," they still see themselves as someone who sleeps late. When someone says, "I am becoming a disciplined person," every single morning becomes a vote for that new identity. Every action casts a vote. Every choice says quietly, "This is who I am becoming." So let me ask you something worth sitting with. Who received your vote today? The version of you that makes excuses, or the version that takes responsibility? The version that quits when motivation disappears, or the version that understands motivation is a visitor but discipline is a permanent resident? Confidence is not built by thinking positively. Confidence is built by keeping promises to yourself. Every time you commit to waking up at a certain hour and then actually do it, something inside you notices. Every time you say you will finish something and you finish it, something inside you records it. Every time you choose the disciplined path when comfort was available and entirely justifiable, something inside you begins shifting. Nobody else applauds these moments. Nobody writes about them. But your mind is collecting evidence. Evidence that you are reliable. Evidence that your word means something. Evidence that you can be trusted with the direction of your own life. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, that evidence becomes confidence. That confidence becomes courage. That courage becomes action. That action becomes opportunity. That opportunity becomes transformation. Not because life suddenly became easier, because you became someone life could trust with more. Imagine two people standing in front of the exact same challenge. One thinks, "I hope I do not fail at this." The other thinks, "Whatever happens, I will learn from it." Same challenge, different identity, completely different outcome. Fear does not disappear for either of them, but its influence changes dramatically. One person obeys the fear, the other walks forward with it anyway. And that difference, that single difference in how a person relates to their own fear, separates the people who spend their life waiting from the people who spend their life building.